What's going on, guys? Ben here, owner and president of Strong Insurance. Today we are going to break down cyber insurance for fleets. As you may or may not know, Erie Insurance and Philadelphia Insurance were both deeply impacted by cyber attacks last week, shutting them down for multiple days where the agents as well as the clients were not able to access their policy data, make payments, make changes, etc. Now, if you can imagine, these multi-million, if not billion-dollar insurance companies are getting affected by, in this case, ransomware attacks. How easily it would be for your ELD providers, your TMS providers, your dispatch providers, or even your actual fleet itself to be affected by these attacks. So without further ado, let's get right into cyber insurance for fleets.
Between October 2024 and March 2025, the U.S. saw a 136% increase in Advanced Persistent Threat (APT) activity, prolonged and targeted cyber attacks in which an intruder gains unauthorized access to a network and remains undetected for an extended period. Trellix researchers report that 55% of APT-29's observed activity in this period specifically targeted the transportation and shipping sectors, signaling a coordinated focus on disrupting or surveilling supply chain operations. Ransomware continues to plague U.S. organizations, with 58% of all global ransomware-related posts traced back to U.S.-based attacks. One of these attacks was Estes Express Lines, Richmond-based less-than-truckload LTL carrier. Date October 2023, country United States. Consequences: temporary freight diversions to competitors. Estes Express Lines experienced a cyber attack in October 2023 that disrupted its email, phones, website, and other systems for weeks. The attack led to temporary freight diversions to competitors before Estes restored its systems and regained business.
All right, guys, there we got a good look at some of the most recent cyber and ransomware attacks that have been affecting the transportation industry. Now listen, the transportation industry is no stranger to these cyber and ransomware attacks. As of the 2024 report, the transportation industry is the second most affected industry when it comes to cyber and ransomware attacks, falling only behind the manufacturing industry. That should put to the forefront the importance of all of our fleets, especially those 25 plus, in having a proper, well-rounded cyber policy. So in the rest of the video today, we're going to cover a few primary topics. We're going to look at the overall general structure of a cyber policy. We're going to take a deeper dive into first versus third party, and probably most importantly, we are going to take a dive into CBI, or contingent business interruption. That is a very important coverage for the transportation industry for the way that it operates. So let's look at the general structure first. So first, we're going to have first party liability. That's going to be your first party coverage. It's going to be things that happen directly to you and your softwares or your logins. Second, you're going to have third party. This is going to be things that happen because of you, right? So say you have all of your driver's data inside of a software. You give that password out inadvertently. Someone gets into your TMS. They're able to extract all of your driver data, date of birth, driver's license number, potential social security numbers, and now things start happening to those drivers because of your failure to be secure. And now you might have lawsuits from drivers or things like that coming your way, whether it could also be shippers, whatever they can get out of your TMS. So that's going to be third party. After that, we're going to look at dependent business interruption, or CBI, contingent business interruption. Those are going to be claims on things that happen outside of your control. Maybe your TMS itself gets hacked and now you're unable to operate for multiple days. Or maybe your ELD gets hacked and you're unable to operate until the FMCSA comes in and maybe gives some relief in the form of waiving hours of operation for that ELD until the issue is resolved. And then general business interruption, just the downtime that is caused by the cyber or ransomware attack. And then obviously there's coverages, there's a ton more coverages there. There's coverages to pay for a ransomware attack, or the ransom, if ransomware is what is applied. If someone applies ransomware to your software or to your computers and say, listen, we want $50,000 in order to remove that ransomware, Some of these cyber policies have sublimits or limits that will actually pay that ransom. So there's a ton of other coverages in there, but those are kind of your baseline overviews or outline of a cyber policy. So now let's go back to first party and third party. First party, when it comes to the transportation industry, you're primarily going to be looking at, dispatching if you do in-house dispatching, billing if you do in-house billing, ELD gets directly hacked. Any of those things getting directly hacked, those are things that are going to actually just shut you down, right? And then, like I say, the third party is going to be, lawsuits or fines that you may face because of a breach. Typically, I would say one of the most common things that you could see in the form of a breach is going to be driver data. You have a ton of driver data, especially if you're a larger fleet, 3, 5, 600, 700 power units. You might have, over 25 years, you have thousands and thousands of drivers' personal information, driver's license numbers, potential social security numbers, addresses, first name, last name. You've got everything someone needs to steal identity. So if they were to use some sort of social engineering or anything of that nature, get into your TMS because you have allowed them to, through a phishing scam or social engineering or any of those methods that these guys are using nowadays, and get all of that driver data, there's a good possibility that you could end up in a lawsuit. All those drivers get together, or there's a small class action against you, or things like that. That is going to be your third party. Now, in my opinion, the most important, or arguably one of the most important coverages, is going to be CBI, Contingent Business Interruption. This is going to be, so first off, this is typically sublimited very low on most cyber policies, $50,000, maybe $100,000. Often it is excluded altogether. I would highly recommend that if you aren't aware if you have this, or if you aren't certain that you have this, please reach out to Strong Insurance. Any of our agents would be happy to look at your existing cyber policy and do an audit with you and ensure that you have some of these very important coverages. Back to it. CBI is going to be coverage for interruptions by a third party. So let's imagine your ELD. We're just going to use Motive because it's the most widely known ELD. They have not had a cyber attack to my knowledge, but we're using them as a reference. Let's say that you're using Motive, and Motive has a giant cyber attack which shuts down all Motive electronic logging devices nationwide that are using their product. Now you cannot operate. That is downtime until the FMCSA steps in and relieves in some fashion. That downtime typically is not covered or is sublimited very low by your cyber policy. So if you're down for 3 days and you've got 200 trucks that aren't running, or let's say Samsara, same thing there, they get shut down. You got 200, 250 trucks that aren't running for 3 days. That is a ton of money. That is loads that are showing up late that could cause disruptions across the entire transportation or manufacturing industry. It could just get really, really ugly really fast. And so it's really important, in my opinion, to have that contingent business interruption coverage there for you. And we're not just looking at ELDs. You got TMSs that can happen too. There's a ton of other things that can go down. A load board could get hacked, your TMS, fuel cards, ELD providers, your billing software, dispatching, if you're outsourcing, any of your dispatching. Even if you're not outsourcing your dispatching, you're doing dispatching in-house, but you're using a dispatching software. Imagine that software gets hacked and now your dispatchers are running around like chickens with their heads cut off, not knowing what to do. So there's a ton of things that can be affected pretty quickly in the transportation industry, and that's one of the reasons it is hit as often as it is. It's a very large and often thought to be wealthy industry, and so it's a prime target for these ransomware attacks. So along with that, let's look at some other things that can happen. So funds transfer, social engineering. So funds transfer, someone using phishing or social engineering, which would be on the phone, and kind of manipulating that phone call to sound like someone else or sound like someone in distress or things like that, and get bank information or anything like that and access your money. Just general data breach. Asset tracking, this one is becoming huge because a lot of these brokers, and I know most of these larger fleets have asset trackers in their fleets. They've got trailer trackers, they've got truck trackers. The trucks themselves anymore are coming from the factory with a lot of tracking devices on them. There's ways for these guys to hack into that stuff, and they could potentially, if they can get into your trackers, they can see where your fleets are at any given time, which heightens the ability. They could sell that data to someone who wants to steal your trailers. You know, they could sell that data to anybody. You know, it's really something to watch out for. And then ransomware. That's probably the most common we're seeing right now. They lock something down. They say we want 100,000, we want 250,000, we want $1 million to unlock it, and that is one of the most common types of cyber attack we are seeing right now. So as you can see, there are a ton of reasons why you need to ensure that you have proper insurance, specifically in the cyberspace right now. Like I say, if these multi-million, if not billion-dollar insurance companies and Fortune 500 companies can be affected, you better believe that your fleet of 15 trucks, your fleet of 200 trucks can be affected just as quickly, if not worse. So if you want to have a full review of your cyber policy done, please feel free to reach out to any of our agents here at Strong Insurance. Our contact information is down below. And then additionally, if you'd like to continue to learn more about the trucking industry and the trucking insurance industry as a whole, give us a like, give us a follow, and as always, keep it rubber side down.